Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. Our broadcast today comes from our most recent MetaStrategy Digital Symposium. It's a panel discussion covering the topic of how talent and culture enable high performance and enterprise agility. And that conversation featured Raghu Sagi, the Chief Information Officer of Inspire Brands, and Onyeka Nchege, the Chief Information Officer of Novant Health. Both Raghu and Onyeka share remarkable stories of how their cultures and their respective companies take inspiration from constituents and members from across their ecosystems, bringing the company values closer to the customers they serve. Onyeka discusses how these ecosystems also drive innovation for his company. Raghu shared an impressive anecdote about the evolving in-person model at several of the restaurants that are part of Inspire Brands' portfolio. Each of them share numerous other examples. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Gentlemen, welcome. It's so great to speak with you both today.
Same, Peter. Great to talk to you as well.
It's a great pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for making the time. So, Raghu, maybe I'll start with you. Raghu is the Chief Information Officer of Inspire Brands and a company of nearly $15 billion in revenue, a multi-brand restaurant company, the 32,000 restaurants across brands like Arby's, Baskin-Robbins, Buffalo Wild Wings, Dunkin', and others. He's been in that role for roughly 3 years and came to the company after a tenure as SVP and Chief Engineering Officer at Sephora. Raghu, let me begin with you. As I said, I'd love to, yours is a really interesting organization in as much as, you've got your corporate brand and Inspire Brands, but then you've got a variety of different brands underneath those. I represented a few of them in the description there a moment ago. And you've got franchisees, you've got different formats and therefore different ways in which the organization contemplates things. And you've mentioned to me in past conversations that culture begins in the restaurants themselves. As you think about kind of what you value, how you think about things, you need to have that as an extension of the restaurants. Talk a bit about that insight and the way in which you bring that to life, please.
Yeah, I think as a technologist inside the support center, and what I tell my team is that our existence is only required for the purpose of serving our team members who are serving our guests. So we take it pretty seriously on understanding how to empower, how to provide the experience for our guests through our team members. So I think being able to have our 650,000 employees across our brands, that includes franchisees and corporate restaurants, touch millions of people that come through our doors. And I think having those team members essentially be happy to be there serving the customers and, growing in their careers along the way, I think is important to us. And that kind of serves as a foundation for, if that's who you're serving, what our culture should be. And I would say that that's how we anchor the culture inside the support center to the culture that inside the restaurants.
Yeah. Onyeka, I'd like to turn to you, if I may. As I mentioned, the CIO of Novant Health, a roughly $7 billion revenue healthcare system based in the southeastern part of our country. Onyeka has been in his role a little shy of a year and a half and is a 5-time CIO at a variety of different companies. So has broad insights across a variety of industries as to the evolution of that role as well. Onyeka, talk about a variety of constituents. Raghu was just applying that to his environment. You obviously have the same across a wide array of things that Novant Health does, from the hospitals themselves, of course, the healthcare providers. There's the whole payments ecosystem, of course, the end customer as well. As you think about culture, are there ways in which you, maybe in ways comparable to what Raghu mentioned, that you kind of draw in inspiration from the various constituents that represent those who you partner with and serve ultimately?
Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. So, at Novant Health, people that's our business, right? Mm-hmm. We treat each other with respect, compassion. When you think about the culture of Novant Health, we embrace the differences in our strengths while fostering an environment of inclusion, empowerment, inspiration, courage. So we always have to remember our business is about the care of all people, right? Starting with our team members. And so from an aspiration perspective, we are an inclusive team of purpose-driven people. So when you think about what we do and how we do it and the ability to impact lives in a positive manner, right? Regardless of industry, we all have a desire to better understand our customers, right? And the things that we tend to think about are always looking for ways to make the patient experience remarkable, right? So when we think about talent, it's an easy draw, right? Because most of us are in a place where we want to be about impacting lives in a positive manner. So, whether it's making things easier to understand, easier to schedule, or even easier to find, right? Our goal is all about how do we make sure that the patient experience is better today than it was yesterday. So we tend to put that out front, quite frankly. And that's usually the thing that brings people in to our organization is the ability to know that. So take someone from like myself, right? So you mentioned, I've been with the organization a little less than a year and a half. For me, it was all about exactly that, right? So my father has Parkinson's. So the ability to impact lives in a positive manner and be in a position and in a place where I might actually be able to impact my father's life, right? That was all the difference maker in the world. And then when you think about Novant Health, that is all about innovation, right? All about how do we co-create with others, right? It became a no. That's literally it was just a no-brainer for. So when I talk to others that are thinking about joining our organization, Peter, I pitched them on the same things, right? You have an opportunity to impact lives in a positive manner, and that's what Novant Health's about.
How powerful is that? Thank you for those anecdotes, Onyeka, and especially its application back to your own life. Onyeka, I'd like to stick with you for a moment, if I may, because you alluded to a fascinating aspect of Novant Health that I have found, this co-creation that you referenced. I know that as you think about talent and as you think about casting the net widely to identify innovative ideas, yours as an organization and you as a leader really think from an ecosystem approach. And I find that to be really fascinating. In fact, I've wrote a whole section of my most recent book, Getting to Nimble, on ecosystems and the necessity of them, as so much competition today actually is more ecosystem to ecosystem than it is company to company. Talk a bit about the way in which you think about the philosophy behind that, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to share an anecdote as to how you something that brings that to life for our audience here.
Sure, happy to do that. So, Peter, as you can imagine, I think all of us kind of fall in that same space. It's sometimes it can be difficult to navigate the emerging technology environment and identify truly valuable capabilities, right? So for us at Novant Health, identifying our core capability set and then finding what I'm going to call trusted partners to deliver on that capability set, that's been key for us. So having a strong partner ecosystem, we're able to deliver a consistent experience for our users. In addition, by creating a stable platform, by partnering with top performing partners, we're able to take risks with less proven partners and truly innovate. So I also believe that by building a strong partner ecosystem, we can establish ourselves as a differentiator in our field because we have access to cutting edge tech that comes out of sustainable and substantial investment that our partners pour into R&D. So one of the things that we did, and this is really exciting. So when we talk about this, we at Novant Health, we get really excited about it. So at Novant Health, we have long been at the forefront of leveraging technology to enhance how healthcare is delivered to our patients. We've been working on advancing technologies to create world-class care experiences, both at home and at our facilities. So in 2019, we solidified a partnership with Zipline as their first partner in the developed world. We had a shared goal, right, to create a new national model for building the most resilient and responsive healthcare system possible. Now, as a regional healthcare system that operates in, call it 20 hospitals, over 800 locations, the idea of Zipline's drone delivery services, that struck us as a game changer, right? Because think about it, we're in a situation where, from a pandemic perspective, you can't get out to some of the underlying locations where we are. So our initial plan was to offer drone-based delivery of medical supplies, sometime towards the end of 2020. We'd always had that ultimate goal of delivering that. But again, as I mentioned, COVID-19 fast-tracked that operation, right? And in May of 2020, we were granted a waiver by the FAA to begin emergency operations of zipline drones to help us in our COVID-19 response. We were the first healthcare system to respond to COVID-19 with drone distribution. Now, that's exciting that we were able to be in a place where we could still get PPE to our employees so that they could continue to provide remarkable service and remarkable care to our patients. That was a big deal for us. And so partnering with, whether it's a startup or even established organizations, finding an opportunity to co-create, but it has to be something that we find value in as well, right? So we're not just co-creating for the sake of it. There has to be an applicability to that for us. So that's just one thing that we did that I know Novant Health is incredibly proud of as well.
What an amazing story. And you mentioned May of 2020. This is only a couple months after the pandemic had really kind of reared its ugly head. I can only imagine to get FAA approval and to have the beginnings of that in place only a couple months in. What a remarkable thing. Thank you again for sharing that. Raghu, back to you. I really appreciated your thoughts about how the cultural elements really are drawn from the restaurants themselves, and it's important to remember that that's kind of where that's where the rubber meets the road with your customers, and therefore pay each of those restaurants their due respect. Just as Onyeka provided us some anecdotes as to the challenges and ways of meeting the challenges associated with the past couple of years in pandemic. Some of the brands that you have had a real in-person component. I think of Buffalo Wild Wings, for example, which is, historically primarily in person, going with your friends, having all the televisions with all the NFL games on, let's say, and, seeing your hometown team while you're enjoying wings and a beer or two. Obviously, the COVID led to some real necessity to change that model to some extent. And I wonder, talk a bit about that evolution process, the recognition that some of these models would at least go through a prolonged period of time of change, and how you thought about making those changes happen.
Yeah. I think first I want to say, Onyeka and his team, congratulations on looks like a fascinating work in a short period of time. So it's hard to achieve that level of quickness in there. So going back to our business side, I think if you look at pre-COVID, restaurant industry has never seen a disruption or a change of this magnitude, I would say, in the past 30, 40, 50 years. And restaurant industry has always been kind of lagging behind the retail or banking or some of these companies, and the technology investments have never been made in the restaurant industry. I think fast forward 2 years, Inspire Brands was already thinking about this thesis that we would have to be able to invest in technology-driven, data-driven, personalized-driven experiences for our customers as well as for our team members. And in the last 2 years, I think our thesis actually has come to life. I mean, it's unfortunate to see the pandemic, but how the guests have completely changed their behavior in terms of interacting with any one of our businesses, if you will, right? So speaking of Buffalo Wild Wings, we went from almost no off-premise business to almost 100% off-premise business in over a period of 3 weeks when the pandemic started, when the closures started to happen. So we had to adapt. We had to adapt to say, okay, fortunately, we had a digital platform that allowed our guests to be able to place an order for takeout or delivery or curbside. Those type of conveniences were something that I think that we were able to provide. And in order to be able to kind of really uniquely provide that type of experiences, technology had to do a bunch of stuff. I mean, we rolled out curbside really quickly. We rolled out contactless payment, which was not necessarily that important at the time. And I think those are the type of things I would say is as a technology team, we came together to be able to serve that one brand. To finish up on the thought on the multi-brand, each brand is a unique experience. So Sonic, you drive in, so they already had a little bit of a non-contact, but being able to have the mobile order. So we took back and looked at the approach of how do we bring the technology, the culture of agility, innovation, to be able to apply to all of our brands. So I think those few learnings, I think, over the past 2 years. And I think what Onyeka was talking about, technology kind of empowering and technology kind of, powering the businesses through a quick innovation, I think is what I would say we had to do for Buffalo Wild Wings as well.
I think it's really inspiring. One of the great sort of meta messages across each of you is not you leveraging the necessity. The necessity being the mother of invention. There are many necessities during these times that were brought about as a result of the change to all of our lives and to our businesses in the past couple of years. And it's inspiring to hear these great ideas that were implemented, perhaps in some cases would not have even been thought of but for the crisis itself, and presumably have a longer tail associated with them in terms of the value that those might create, even once we reach, let's hope sooner rather than later, some modicum of normalcy to the way in which we live and do business as well. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for a really remarkable conversation. Onyeka Nchege, Raghu Sagi, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your insights from the inspirational journeys that each of you are on with your companies.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter.